Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video we are going to be talking about the Dallas Cowboys and previewing their fantasy football outlook for the 2021 season. I've been doing this I'm doing this with every single team this offseason, and we are going in alphabetical order, so now I'm at the Dallas Cowboys. So if you're interested in every team alphabetically with their city higher than Dallas, then I have videos made for them. So yeah, if you're interested in stuff like this, please check out more of my channel. I talk about a wide variety of stuff. I do song covers, song reactions, talk about NFL. I'll get into probably some NBA stuff after the playoffs or whatever and talk about the offseason. And yeah, so if you're interested, please check out my channel. And also, if you can guess the name of the song that I start out with, and if you guess it, then I will answer one of your fantasy football questions and feature you on the channel. So take advantage of that because I only have 40 subscribers, so I'm pretty small. And yeah, so just saying, take advantage of the opportunity. So before I get to the Cowboys, I just want to preface real quickly with talking about the Julio Jones trade. I have not done this yet. I do apologize about that. But last week, if you were not aware, Julio Jones was traded to the Tennessee Titans. And I covered the Atlanta Falcons in a video a few weeks ago at the time when Julio was there. So I'm not going to talk about the Titans yet. I'm going to wait until I get to them alphabetically. But in terms of Atlanta, keep in mind what I said in that video about Calvin Ridley and Russell Gage. I think those guys will be very underrated, especially now that Julio is gone. I like Calvin Ridley as a guy who is a lock to be a top 10 receiver, most likely a top 5 receiver, but he's going to go probably in the 3rd to 4th round. So that is huge fantasy upside for you if you take Calvin Ridley. I'm very high on him. Also, Russell Gage is very underrated as well. I think a lot of people are going to really be overhyping Kyle Pitts to be the replacement tight end, or the replacement number one option for them. I don't see it because I think tight ends generally, as rookies, have struggled to adapt to the system. So yeah, I mean, it tended to start off a little slow. Look at T.J. Hawkinson, for example, on Detroit. So yeah, now let's move over to the Cowboys. I'm going to start with their schedule real quick to give you an idea of how they might do as the season progresses. And my key takeaway with the schedule is that there's 2 times to buy low. There's one to a lesser degree after week 2, and then there's a big opportunity after their bye week in week 7 going into week 8 to take advantage of buying low on the Cowboys based on their matchups. So week 1, tough matchup. They got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It could turn out to be a shootout, but Tampa Bay's defense is for real. They also played the Los Angeles Chargers in week 2. Both those games are on the road, and the Chargers are going to be getting Joey Bosa back. So they have a good defense in the past when he's been there. So potential for low-scoring games, but then you want to try to buy low on them after week 2 because the next 2 weeks they've got Philadelphia, which is not a very good defense anymore, and then the Carolina Panthers, which is also not a good defense either. So that's a good opportunity to take advantage of the Cowboys early. Then they got 2 difficult games. Giants have had an improved defense, and then the New England Patriots expect to have an improved defense as well. Then they go to their bye week. But then after that is when you really want to take advantage and try to buy low on the Cowboys. In week 8, they've got the Minnesota Vikings, which is historically a good defense, but not what it used to be. Then they play the Denver Broncos at home, which is the same way, historically good, not the same as before. Then they've got some great matchups back to back to back. They've got the Atlanta Falcons, which is not a good defense at all. Kansas City, which is an improved defense, but given the fact that there's going to be a lot of scoring in this game, I imagine it's going to be a shootout. And then they host the Las Vegas Raiders, which is a team that is not a good defense at all, and it's on a short week because remember this is Thanksgiving week, so I expect them to just get absolutely lit up by the Cowboys in this game. So take advantage of that stretch from week 8 through 12 and try to buy them low at their bye week. So yeah, let's move to the positions now. We'll start with Dak Prescott. So the key to focusing on this Cowboys team is you really have to look at the stats prior to week 4 to really gauge this team. Because if you remember, Dak Prescott in week 5 broke his ankle and was out for the rest of the season, and then they're playing Andy Dalton, which seriously diminished the numbers of these players. So the key thing to keep in mind is that Dak Prescott, before he got injured, at the end of week 4, he was the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football. And he's a guy that generally is going in the draft, at least last year, he was going at one of the last QBs drafted to potentially even a guy you pick up off on waivers. So I expect him to go a little higher this year, but nonetheless, if the offense is run similarly, Mike McCarthy, remember, last year was his first year. If he kind of can get this offense going the same way it was before, Dak Prescott could be great value for you in fantasy football. Granted, I don't know how high he's going to go. If there's a potential that his hype value could drive up his draft stock and then make him go higher than he should be taken. But I still like him because I think that coming off the injury, I think people are going to be kind of sleeping on him. And he was very productive with them when he did play. Remember, he had like 3 games where he had at least 450 yards in back-to-back weeks. A lot of that is because the defense was so bad that it put them in that situation to begin with. But still, I'm definitely looking at where Dak Prescott is going to be going on draft boards because I think he could give you great value as a guy that you could pick up middle rounds as one of the mid to late QBs taken on the draft board. So now let's move to the running back position. And things get a little more interesting here. So the running back on the Cowboys is Zeke Elliott. And Zeke Elliott has been a very productive player in fantasy football in years past, but has kind of fell off a little bit last year. Wasn't quite the same. I think a lot of that is contributed to Dak Prescott being injured. However, I'm still concerned about Zeke Elliott and not very high on taking him. So I'm going to kind of discuss that in a sec. So what fans of Zeke Elliott will say is that you take the numbers from when Dak Prescott was there. He was the number 4 running back in fantasy football when Dak was healthy up until that week 4 point that I've been telling you about. He was the number 9 the whole season in PPR, 11 in standard, so he still maintained that RB1 position. And the fact that his numbers and his yards per carry were generally a little higher with Dak Prescott than it was when it was Andy Dalton. But there are some concerning facts that I want to talk about with him as well that make me cautious about taking him high. So we look at Zeke Elliott, his breakdown. If you remember it correctly, the 5 games that Dak played was when Zeke had 5 of his 6 rushing touchdowns. So again, pro Zeke Elliott factor. But you take a look at the yards per game. So in the first 2 games of the season, Zeke had 22 carries, but he only managed to get 96 and 89 yards off of that. So he's averaging about 4.2 yards a carry. He did get a touchdown in both games, but the key thing is that his long rushing yard was only 14 yards across those first 2 games. So what that tells me is that Zeke was getting a lot of opportunity to pound the ball, and really kind of they were trying to feature Zeke as much as they can in that game, but he didn't really have a lot of breakthrough runs. He just had if his long was 14, that shows me that he was more just getting a lot of volume. He wasn't necessarily making a lot of explosive plays, and that's concerning because a lot of people have criticized Zeke and that he looks like he's slowed down a little bit from his rookie year when he went off and the following years after that, which is concerning because they also have another running back, Tony Pollard, who was more productive in the touches that he got than Zeke Elliott did. So that suggests that there's potential that this could become more of a committee backfield where they use Zeke Elliott in certain downs and they use Tony Pollard in there as well to split some of the shares. So it's going to be interesting to see how this develops as the season goes on, but that's a concerning fact to me. And then you look at the next 2 weeks when Dak was healthy against the Cleveland Browns and the Seattle Seahawks. And if you remember in these games, the Cowboys really fell behind, and they basically had to throw the ball the whole time to catch up because the defense put them in that situation. But again, he only had, in the Seattle game, he had 14 rushes for 34 yards. That's an average of 2.4 yards a carry. And then in the Cleveland game, he had 12 rushes for 54 yards, which is a little better. That was his high in that game among those first couple games, but it wasn't really, again, he didn't really have the opportunity because the defense fell behind. So that's what I'm wondering about, is that there's a lot of factors with Zeke Elliott that is concerning. Is he going to be explosive? Is the defense going to take them out of games like it did in week 3 and 4 last year? What's Tony Pollard going to look like? How is he going to affect it? And then you consider all that on top of the fact that Zeke is most likely going to be a first-round draft pick, considering the level of hype and popularity that he has. And it's just, to me, I would personally rather stay away from other running backs. I think there's a chance he could be good and could have a bounce-back season, but there's so much risk in that, I would rather not use a first-round pick on Zeke Elliott personally. Tony Pollard, though, on the other hand, I really like, simply because he's not going to go as high on draft boards, but then the handcuff value that he provides in his team is incredible. Because if Zeke Elliott were for some reason to get hurt, Tony Pollard has shown that he's been more productive with his touches last year, as I just said. So he's going to be a guy, if Zeke is down and Tony Pollard is the back, that he's going to get a ton of workload, going to give you a lot of production as well. And he's a guy that will probably go in the mid to late rounds of the draft. He's probably going to be a little more higher priced in terms of where he's going to fall on the draft board than a lot of other handcuffed options, but he's a good guy to pick up, especially if you can get a good series of running backs early on to maybe use as a handcuff and provide value both to you and to the Zeke Elliott owner in trades. Two other running backs that they have of note, they have 2 rookie running backs on their team, Dowdle and Olonihua. I think that's how I probably butchered his name. I apologize about that. But those are 2 rookie running backs that they have from South Carolina and TCU, respectively, that have opportunity if for some reason there's injuries in the backfield. But both of them, I don't project that they'll have a lot of opportunity for one. And then 2, just from reading their draft profiles, they both have issues with fumbling. So that suggests to me that these are players that you do not want to look at, but just keep an eye on if their injuries occur or something to that effect. We move to the wide receivers now, and this is another interesting part of the Cowboys about how they will look next year, because considering how they did with Dak Prescott and how they did in the absence of him. But there are 3 guys that had over 100 targets that are going to be heavily scrutinized as top picks, and it's Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and Ceedee Lamb. So I'm going to talk about each of them, but I'm a little cautious with each of them because from looking at game to game, and a lot of this is attributed to Andy Dalton, but even when Dak Prescott was there, they had relatively up and down games. So let's start off with Amari Cooper, who's listed as their number 1 receiver and paid like a top 5 receiver in the league, which is extremely overpriced in my opinion. But Amari Cooper, he's nobody's doubts his talent. He's been one of the more talented receivers in quite a while, but I personally stay away from him in fantasy football because throughout his whole career, he has been a guy that is totally up and down. He'll have some games where he goes off and scores you 40 points, other games where he catches 1 or 2 passes for 10 yards. So I personally avoid that because I want to use my receivers as the most reliable piece in fantasy football, where they can be a guy that I know they're going to get targets, I know they're going to get opportunity. They can kind of just be the rock of your team in a sense. And Amari Cooper is not that at all. He was the most productive of these 3 receivers with Dak Prescott there, so that means that he'll likely do well as long as him and Dak stay healthy. But with how much up and down there is, I personally would try to avoid him. And the other thing is, there's so many targets to go around this team if everybody's healthy that it is concerning that he'll be up and down even more, which was kind of the case with a lot of these players last season, just because there's so much talent on this receiving core. And also Zeke Elliott, by the way, had 52 catches last year, so keep that in mind as well. Now another receiver is Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup has been a promising player for a while, who's still relatively young. He's only 25. But the thing that's concerning to me about him is that he easily did the worst of these 3 receivers when Dak Prescott was healthy. We look at his games when Dak was there. He had 3 receptions in in the first game, 2 in the second game against Atlanta. Seattle, he had 6 receptions, 138 yards, touchdown. See, that was his breakout game. But then the next week he had 2 receptions for 29 yards and no touchdowns against the Browns. So again, up and down. But other than that Seattle game, he was really not featured by this Dallas team. So that's what I'm concerned about with him is when now that Dak is healthy, how is this guy going to actually perform with everybody else being healthy? So I'm cautious against Michael Gallup to a degree in that as well. The one receiver I think that I would take if you're looking at any of these 3 is Ceedee Lamb. So Ceedee Lamb is a second-year player. He showed a lot of promise last year at times, especially with Dak Prescott being there. He kind of fell off later in the year, but I think that's to be expected because of the quarterback play they were working with as the season went along. But when Dak Prescott was on the team, we look at his first game, 5 receptions, 59 yards. That's solid for game 1. Next game against Atlanta, 6 receptions, 106 yards. Good. It kind of fell off a little bit against Seattle, 5 for 65. But then against Cleveland, 5 for 79 and 2 touchdowns. And then the game after that, which Dak got hurt, he had 8 receptions for 124 yards. So we saw this trend with him early where he had some breakout games, and then he kind of fell off for quite a while. Notably against Washington, he didn't have any receptions the first time they met. And then later in the season against the Bengals, he only had 2 receptions in a game. So he's another up and down player, but he has the most upside and promise of these 3 receivers to improve. So I personally, if you're just going off of potential and what could be, I would personally rather take Ceedee Lamb than these guys. Than Gallup and Cooper. Other receivers of note, Cedrick Wilson is a guy who was productive at times last year, but he only had 17 receptions, and he did have 2 touchdowns, so he's kind of an explosive player here and there, but I don't think he's really going to get a lot of opportunity unless somebody gets hurt. And then a rookie they drafted, Simi Fehoko, I believe that's how you say his name. He's a 5th-round pick out of Stanford. He may have potential as a guy you can take a flyer on at the very end of drafts or monitor on waivers, but I personally would rather not do that because I think this is going to be a 3-receiver offense for the most part, and I just don't really see a lot of opportunity for him at this time. Tight ends. So the interesting situation here as well. So Blake Jarwin is still listed as their number 1 tight end. Remember, he tore his ACL in week 1, so Dalton Schultz, in his absence, the backup tight end now, was the number 10 tight end last year because of that volume that he got an opportunity with this explosive offense. So, and that was even for a lot of the season with Andy Dalton. So Blake Jarwin has potential to improve, or to be a guy that you can pick up with a late round pick, could give you some good value as one of the later tight ends. He hasn't really ever had a breakout season yet, so that's concerning if Jarwin can recover from his injury and be an elite tight end still. But he could be worth the flyer late in the draft as a guy you can pick up to give you some good value on your team. Especially if you're really hurting for tight ends, this could be a worthy flyer or stream candidate. Defense. So this was a very bad defense last year, but I think the thing to keep in mind is that there are talented players on this defense. Greg Lawrence Lawrence has been good. Gregory has been good. Leighton Vander Esch, Alden Smith, Trayvon Diggs has potential. They drafted Micah Parsons, so they have pieces that could be good. It's just they just didn't fit together at all last year for whatever reason. So there is potential with Dan Quinn now as the defensive coordinator that they could recover and have a good season. So because of that, they could be a defense to keep an eye out on in these first couple, or in the later rounds of the draft, depending on where they go. I think it's going to be difficult for them against Tampa Bay in week 1, but then you got Chargers, Eagles, and Panthers the next 3 weeks. Could be good games for the defense. So it's a very risky play to see if they can actually put it together, but I think that I could see a scenario where the defense is a decent buy low candidate and then actually does pretty well next season. And then their kicker is Greg Zuerlein. Greg Zuerlein has been a notable kicker in fantasy football for quite a while, but mostly when he was with the Rams. He would be a good kicker to consider because of the opportunity he's going to get with his offense. But two concerning factors to me are, one, he plays for the Cowboys, so that's going to drive up his hype value. He's probably going to go higher than the last round of the draft, in which I don't advise taking a kicker. And then the other thing is, over 50 yards, he was only 3 for 9. So less than 50 yards, he only missed 1 field goal the whole season. But then outside of that, he was getting more erratic. And this is a guy that has been known for his leg and his ability to kick the ball. And obviously, his accuracy is not necessarily there last year with those long kicks. So that is concerning to me about how he could do for next season. So I personally would avoid him. But if he slips for some reason to you in the last round of the draft, I would maybe consider it. All right, well, that's all I got for the Cowboys. Let me know if you like this video. And stay tuned later today. I'm going to be posting about the Denver Broncos, continuing in alphabetical order. So, all right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.